Hello, I'm Dale Ander, and I'm a member of the Control Center Development and Support teams. Welcome to a series of videos covering the key capabilities of IBM Sterling Control Center. If you don't know, Control Center is a monitoring application that lets you view the key activities and actions occurring across your B2B and file transfer infrastructure. Now, in this video, I'm going to introduce you to Open Server Architecture, OSA. If there are applications that Control Center can't monitor out of the box for you, then you could use OSA to instrument them, and Control Center could then monitor them. Let me show you more. So Control Center can monitor lots of applications, out of the box, built in, B2B, Sterling Secure Proxy, Connect Direct, FTP, MQMFT, Connect Enterprise, Connect Express, Global Mailbox. I think there's more. But what if your application isn't in this list? What do? You can use OSA, Open Server Architecture. It allows monitoring of any application. It's a specification. It defines a set of events and what their content can be. These events are formatted as JavaScript object notation, JSON. It's text, I'll show you. And these events are just posted to Control Center over a secure or non-secure HTTP connection. And these events allow Control Center to monitor an application. Both activity and their status, and you can tell it about types of applications that Control Center doesn't know now, and they'll appear in your environmental health on the dashboard and in the file transfers over time. You can see your new server type appear. It's fairly powerful. So here's a JSON document that meets the OSA standard. They're just a list of fields or element names and values. Message ID, message text, node ID, when it happened, occurred. It's just text, and you can see it, and you can create it, and you can post it to Control Center. If you want to know all the gory details about OSA, just go to this link. It's in the Control Center documentation, whatever version you have at the moment. Just look for the posting events. Know that Control Center ships with an Event-publisher software development kit, SDK. It's in the installation folder inside a subfolder named SDK, and there you can find documentation when you unzip it, and there's a doc folder and an index.html, and you can open it and you'll see something like this. And there's even a Java API that ships with the Event Publisher SDK. So if you want to use Java to post your events, we got you covered. So there's a group of event types, if you will. Heartbeat events. They're used by Control Center to know that your application exists and that it's up and running. And the lack of heartbeat events after one was received means that your system must be down. You can send in server status events, server command events about things some command that occurred on your system. If you want Control Center to have an event for it, you can do that. You can have processes and steps within processes. Processes are a long-running transaction, so you can tell Control Center when it's started and when it's stopped. It's kind of like business processes on B2BI or arrive files on Sterling File Gateway. And know that your processes can have 0 or more steps. You can think of the steps as activities within a process that are all correlated together. And you can send in process status events as a process runs, if you like. Know that for Control Center to properly correlate the process events that you send in, to keep them all together, each process must have a unique identifier. And these identifiers consist of up to 3 parts of your events that you send in: the value for the node ID, the value for the process ID, and the value for process name. And I thought I should point out that processes can't start on one server and end on another, for the reason that our identifiers for a process consist of the node ID, process ID, and process name, so the node ID has to be consistent. Now, all OSA events have some fields that are common. The event field, and it's actually required, and it specifies the type of event that's being sent in. A message ID, it's optional. Message text, it's optional. And know that I'm only showing some of the elements, but node ID is an important one. It's required. And this is where you tell Control Center not only the name of your application or server, but its type. And you can specify types that Control Center does not know about. In fact, you need to. And these types can be up to, I think, 255 characters long. And when Control Center sees a type that it's never seen before, it'll actually add that type to the system. And it'll even create a built-in server group for that node type. And the server that it first saw this node type will automatically be added to that server group. And if other events come in with the same node type but a different node name, then that server or those servers would also be added to the new built-in server group. Other common event elements for all OSA events include occurred, and this is a required one. It tells Control Center when that event happened. Another required one is sequence. It's to help Control Center know the order of the events. And you can have a return code. You have to have type, and it's just always this one value, event. The heartbeat is one of your event types. So this is the list of event types, and heartbeat is one. They're sent at regular intervals to let Control Center know your application exists and that it's alive. Proc start, proc end, step start, step end. Remember, this is just a partial list. But I think they're the main ones that you'll use. And all of these fields have a type. It's one of these just 4 different types. Boolean, which has a value of true or false without any quotes. The date, it's a quoted string, and it's of the form year, month, day, time, and it's in UTC-0. So it has to follow this ISO 8601 format. Numbers are just that. No separators, no scientific notation, and more importantly, no quotes. Unlike strings, which can be numbers, but they're surrounded in quotes. So that's the difference between a string and a number. A number is just digits, no quotes. String can be anything, has to be surrounded in quotes. So I showed you that partial list of event types, and I've shown you the common event elements for all event types. For heartbeats, there is one more field that you would have to have. It's required, and it's the heartbeat interval. Heartbeat events are kind of interesting. I think it's kind of a neat concept in Control Center. There's no preconceived notion in Control Center how often heartbeats have to be received. You tell Control Center how often to expect a heartbeat via this heartbeat interval that's a required element for all your heartbeat events. And when Control Center doesn't see a heartbeat within the interval that has been specified, then it will say the server is down. And here's a sample heartbeat event. It's got the required event element, and it's of type heartbeat. It's got the required type element, it's event. It's got when it occurred. It's got the sequence, and it's got some extra. Oh, and it's got node ID, very, very important. There's the type, and there's the name. The name is just 127.0.0.1. Not a great name, but it's a name. Now, process events, they're to tell Control Center about activities that are occurring on your monitored system. And process start tells when a process is started. Process end, it's required, and it needs to be sent in when the process ends. And these two events and all the other associated process events need to have the same node ID, process ID, and process name values, because they're combined to construct a unique ID for your process. Now, all process events, including process step events, which are process events, can have some other common fields, including originating node, process ID. Now this one is required. I think you would understand why. Process name is not required, but I would recommend you always have one. It's the user-friendly part of the name of a process. Remote node, you can have a submitter value. And here's what a process start event might look like. You know, we have the proc start as our event. We've got type. We've got our when it occurred. We've got our sequence. And very importantly, we have our node ID, which always has the same node type and node name if the events for a process are common. Process end event will be very similar. It'll have the same, if it's for the same process, it'll have the same node ID, have the same process name, and it'll have the same process ID. And the only difference here is that this is the proc end for the process that we saw start. Now, steps within processes, events for them are optional, but if you have activities within a process, then you should have a step start event and a step end event for each of those potentially long-running activities. And they should have the same proc ID, proc name, and node ID that your process events that they're to be correlated with have. Now, there's even more fields if you're dealing with step events. You can have the direction and the file size and the from node. And if it was for about a transfer, you would have a local file name, a remote file name, and you would include this expr element with a value of y if it was for a transfer. All step events, so that Control Center can know the difference between a step event and just a process start or process end, is this step name. It's the unique name of a step within a process. So here's a step start example that's actually about a transfer starting. And it's got a local file name, it's got a remote file name, it even has a remote node name. And it's got the monitored server name. It's telling which server was responsible for the process, the secondary node, the remote node in this case, most likely. Process name is get. And here's the step end. And because this was for a transfer, it's got the expr element with a value of y. There are other event types that you'll probably use. Server status is one. It's used to identify the shared services and components associated with a server. And you can use them to communicate the status of those services and components. And when you send in a server status event that identifies a server as having components or services, then the Control Center will show you those in the environmental health widget, as well as when you look at the details for the server. Like this B2BI server, it's got a component called node, it's got a component called adapter, and it's got a component called perimeter or perimeter servers. You can also use file transfer events if you don't want to use the process events like I showed. You can send in process status events to tell Control Center the status of started but not ended processes. And there's a server command kind of event to tell Control Center about commands that were issued or received by the server. Maybe somebody did a delete process on that server and you want to relay that information to Control Center. Well, you can do that with a server command kind of event. Now I've got some tips for you when you're using the open server architecture. Choose a reasonable heartbeat interval. And when I say reasonable, one that's not too small. You don't want to be sending in heartbeat events to Control Center every few milliseconds. Maybe once a minute, maybe once every 30 seconds. Just not too often. We don't want to overwhelm Control Center with heartbeat events. As I had mentioned, you can use process events instead of file transfer events. They just have to have the step name and that expr element and local and remote file names. And a very important tip for performance reasons and efficiency, scalability, you name it, events should be posted in batches. Don't send in events to Control Center every millisecond, one at a time. Post them in a batch. And a batch would just be, in JSON terms, just a list of events. In this list, here you can see it starts with a square bracket, and then we've got the open curly bracket and the closed curly bracket. And we're sending in a server status event, and we're sending in another server status event. And because they're in brackets, then we've got a batch of 2. Also know that if you use the Java API for OSA, it does a nice job of batching events for you. I think it's got a separate thread that it uses, and every second or so it will post whatever events you've requested through the API to Control Center. So if there's more than one, it will batch them for you automatically. Well, that's kind of it for my introduction to open server architecture. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see other instructional videos, you can use your browser and search for IBM Sterling Control Center, and I find that it helps to put it inside double quotes. You might add the extra search terms for video and playlist, and hopefully you'll see something, a link like this, and from there you can see many other helpful videos.